Ethiopia, a landlocked country with a rich history, seeks access to the sea to boost its economic growth and regional influence. This effort aims to overcome geographical barriers, strengthen sovereignty, and promote stability in East Africa. Its strategies include diplomatic, legal, and regional initiatives, emphasizing cooperation and sustainable development to shape its role as a key player on the continent. Hello and welcome to our weekly roundup focusing on Ethiopia's pursuit of maritime access and its strategies to enhance economic development, sovereignty and regional stability. I'm your host, Gamachisa Mandida, alongside Barakat Sisai. Stay with us. Hello, Barakat.
Hello, Gamachisa.
Yeah, good. Well, I would like to begin with Ethiopia's contribution to regional peace and stability. And how do you reflect on that? Of course, considering the fact that Ethiopia has historically played a leadership role in regional organizations such as the African Union.
Thank you very much, Gamachis. To start with your question, as you know that Ethiopia is located in the Eastern Africa, and Eastern Africa region is one of the 5 regions of the continent where the Horn of Africa is located. And this region is actually experiencing a lot of challenge. And as you remember, some of the challenges are like in the economy, in the politics, and the other aspects of the social life as well. And countries in the region, both unilaterally, at the same time multilaterally, and unified form, they try their best to find some solution to these predicaments. And this region, as we all know, that for long been described as a negative, in a negative ways, specifically in Eurocentric ways. I mean, like the description about the Horn of Africa is somehow very negative. You know, even some of the analysis, they describe it as a place where inter and intra state conflict is actually raging, where politics is actually monetized, where politics is actually transacts, where intercommunal conflict is actually taking place. When it comes to the economics as well, the region is actually described as one of the regions which is somehow lag behind in terms of just having the basic infrastructures. You know, you can name it, like maybe the education, the school, and the road, and then everything, such a kind of things like that. And from my perspective, one of the reasons that pushed these countries and these regions to be trapped in this difficult situation is just because these countries haven't been able to work together. I mean, in a way that to address this challenge in a comprehensive ways. You know, of course, there has been some sort of collaboration among African countries, among these countries in the region, but their collaboration is not, I mean, enough to address all these problems. But when you look at what Ethiopia has been doing since the time of Immoral, Ethiopia actually, specifically, if you remember when IGAD was actually established in the late 1980s, Ethiopia actually pursues or ushers a new possibility that is cooperation, or we can say that is the new geopolitical imagination or the new geopolitical regionalism, that is cooperation. Ethiopia was one of the leading actors in terms of establishing the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, which was actually IGAD. And when it comes to the peace and security situation, Ethiopia also the pioneer. Actually, Ethiopia's commitment to the collective security dates back to the early 20th centuries when Ethiopia joined the League of Nations. Later on, Ethiopia also one of the founding members of United Nations. After that, I think Ethiopia's contribution to the peace and security, or its engagement in the collective security, started when Ethiopia dispatched its first contingent to the Korean Peninsula when the two Koreans were actually in war in the 1950s. Ethiopia was the first country to send its troops to contribute to the maintenance of peace and security in the peninsula, in the Korean Peninsula. After that, Ethiopia also played an enormous, profound role in maintaining peace and security in Africa as well. For example, if you remember, like in Congo, in Rwanda as well, in Burundi as well, and Liberia as well, Ethiopia has been very much prominent in terms of participating in the provision of UN peacekeeping, as well as the Africa Union peacekeeping mission as well. And the recent Ethiopian peace mission involvement is, as we remember, in Somalia. I remember in 2006 when the then transitional government of Somalia actually invited the Ethiopian government to step in and intervene and to contribute its own fair share for the stability of Somalia. And Ethiopia, the then Ethiopian government also decided to, just provide its shoulder to lean on. For the Somalians people, and if it were not for the intervention of Ethiopian people, Somalia may not have this strong federal government that we have been observing now as well. Apart from this military contribution, Ethiopia's contribution to the peace and security in the region also very much demonstrated on the diplomatic sphere as well. We remember when South Sudan gets independence in 2011, it immediately drifted into civil war, as you remember, and Ethiopia was one of the first country, the pioneer, in terms of just drawing together all the conflictual parties, specifically the Machar and the Salva Kiir's groups, to come to the table and to find some amicable solution to their problems as well. So all this tells you that Ethiopia is a pioneer in terms of just bringing about peace and security in the Horn of Africa and the region as well. And Ethiopia's contribution not only confined to Africa or the region, but also to different parts of the world as well, as I have been mentioned. When you come to the prosperity or economic development, Ethiopia also one of the country that has been championing in terms of just supporting connectivity, regional connectivity development to be thrived in the region. For example, if you look at what Ethiopia has been doing to its neighboring country, Ethiopia has been selling electric power to some of its neighbors like Kenya, Sudan, and Djibouti have been importing Ethiopia's power to power their industries, to power their business, to power their household as well. Ethiopia is doing this, it's based on the principle of just mutual benefit. Like the electricity that Ethiopia is producing by now is not enough to the Ethiopian people. But Ethiopia, because Ethiopia is driven by the principle of share the future, it has been selling its power to the neighboring countries, despite the fact that the power that is generating is not actually enough to, the consumption, what the Ethiopian people is actually needed. On the other aspect of the economic development, for example, if you look at the connectivity, for example, the road linkage that Ethiopia has with Kenya, that Ethiopia has with Sudan, and the road linkage with Djibouti as well demonstrates Ethiopia's commitment to forge some sort of economic and developmental interdependency among the whole countries, the Eastern African regions as well. For example, the rail linkage between Ethiopia and Djibouti, it's also one of the profound examples in terms of just strengthening this growing bilateral relationships. In the sphere of economic as well. I think we shouldn't talk about the air connectivity because Ethiopian Airlines is one of the has good names when it comes to connectivity, not only to the region but also Africa, at the same time to the globe as well. So all in all, what I've already mentioned about is what Ethiopia is contributing to the peace and security as well as the economic development of the Horn of Africa.
Yes, Barakat. By the way, Ethiopia's efforts, these peaceful efforts, they just began quite a long time ago, since we can say the 20th century. And then throughout the years, the decades, Ethiopia has managed to play a crucial role in ensuring peace, in the region. And even, internationally, we remember during the Korea War, Ethiopia sent, its troops. This is, what we always talk about. This is something that we are proud of course. When it comes to, the Horn of Africa, as you said earlier, the Horn of Africa is a very hostile place in terms of conflicting parties' actions. Well, the Horn of Africa, just could have made, improvements a lot if it didn't have, hostile environments. Yeah. take, Eastern Africa, generally in Somalia, in Sudan, in Central Africa, we have, conflicts, different parties. And you said it very well that, Ethiopia has been sending, its troops to ensure peace in those places. And not only that, of course, Ethiopia has been playing its role, diplomatic roles, to ensure peace and development. And especially in recent years, ever since Prime Minister Abiy came to office, of course, Ethiopia is more engaged in peaceful activities in order to ensure prosperity in the Horn of Africa. Now, we need to mention, of course, the inauguration of the GERD, yes. Which we've been enjoying, for some days now, and we're very much happy. And of course, the international community, most of them are happy, even though we might not have some as happy. We know that very well. Ethiopia had, adversaries that didn't want it, to build this dam, and they played, roles to stop, just the building of this dam. And despite all these efforts, Ethiopia has managed to complete this dam. And let me ask you, what does this launch of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam mean for Ethiopia, especially in terms of signifying Ethiopia's determination to harness its own natural resources for economic development?
Yeah, as you have said, this development project by itself should be, looked from the grand perspective of what Ethiopia is aspired to be. Like Ethiopia is actually aspired to be self-sufficient. Like economically, So such a kind of project like the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam is one of, I think, the big projects that actually led Ethiopia to be successful in that front. And now we Ethiopians are in 2080s, This is the brand new year, and because Ethiopia has its own calendar, we are somehow 7 years, 8 years back that of the Gregorian calendar, and we have started this new year with big news. One of, I think that we have been, looking for the past 40 years. That is the construction and the launching of the Great Renaissance Dam. As you have been mentioning about, the Grand Renaissance Dam was actually constructed by the Ethiopians, without having any assistance from any external forces. There has been, some negative attitude about Africa. There has been some thoughts that Africans can't do such a kind of project without having any assistance from the external actors. But Ethiopia debunked that idea and can able to just construct and launch this grand and complex dam. So this dam, beyond its economic benefit, it has also some sort of, message to the Ethiopians and the Africans at the same time to the world as well, as I already mentioned. The first one is when you come to, from the Ethiopian perspective, it's a pride for us. It's actually determine how, it actually demonstrates our ability to plan and execute such a kind of big, complex developmental projects. At the same time, throughout the process, Ethiopians from all walks of life, farmers, students, drivers, pilots, engineers, people from all walks of life actually contributed for the construction of the Great Renaissance Dam. People were very much engaged in buying bonds. They have been giving some gifts, some cash as well, giving some sort of asset as well for the construction of the Great Renaissance Dam. So it's actually set a precedent for other African countries. We Africans can do such a kind of project without, getting some sort of assistance, because this is the truth. This is the understanding that we all have about, when it comes to Africa, we Africans can really make a difference by using our own resource. Domestic resource mobilization can really be an important catalyst for African economic development as well. Apart from that, as we have learned it from the speech made by the African leaders during the launching of the Great Renaissance Dam, for example, the Kenyan President William Ruto said that this Great Renaissance Dam has actually revealed some fact, that is that we can make development, a reality in Africa by using our own resources. Africa is endowed with so many natural resources. For example, Ethiopia is endowed with different kind of natural resources, like water is one of the best example. And just like this, other African countries have also different kind of natural resource, including human resource. So the question is how we are going to leverage that resource to foster development, at the same time to drive the economic growth of that nation. So this dam actually set a precedent for other African countries, and what Ethiopia does is actually something that other African countries should emulate and do within their own economic spheres to forge, at the same time strengthen the economic development of their country. So this Grand Renaissance Dam, beyond its economic benefit, it's actually it actually just conveys like a very big message to other African countries in a way that they should, they try to find or determine their fate by their own determination. By their own commitments as well.
By the way, it has given, insights, new insights,
Yes.
I believe.
Yeah.
Well, as you said, self-reliance is, one important thing that the GERD has brought in. The fact that, Africans can really develop by themselves is the lesson that people can draw from the inauguration of the GERD. If we just go back in the years and see how Ethiopia was treated by international financial institutions when it wanted, when it showed interest to build this GERD, this dam, of course, we had, bad influences, negative influences from some countries, just that didn't want us to build this dam. That's one thing. But secondly, we do believe that these international financial institutions didn't want to lend us, money for the financing of the dam. Partially, I believe, because they were not confident that Ethiopia, just could do it.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
So now this dam, has proven them wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
And even African countries that observe, the inauguration of the dam have shown, interest to build this dam by themselves, by their own resources.
Yeah.
And we just hear, for example, Mozambique, it's a nation that is communicating, international financial institutions to secure, finance for a similar dam, in Mozambique.
Yes.
And this, I believe, must have been, initiated and reinforced by the completion of the dam, the GERD. So it's really, this dam is a symbol of natural pride and, of course, a sign that, we can be self-reliant in other aspects as well. And Barakat, this Ethiopia, through the dam, it generates, it aims to generate electricity to meet domestic needs and support this industrial growth that is evolving in the country. Yeah.
Yes.
For example, we have industries that are being introduced in the country, that are plants being established in the country, and all these need, huge resources, huge power, and for that, the GERD plays, its peculiar role. And you might have, as many plants as possible, but if we don't have, supply of energy, then you can't operate them, and that will be, wastage. And the Grand Renaissance Dam, means a lot of things, for Africans in general. And it makes, of course, Ethiopia energy hub for the region in the Horn of Africa, and maybe the rest of Africa as well. Do you have anything to add on this?
Like when it comes to the economic, benefits, its prime objective is to produce surplus electric power. The Grand Renaissance Dam, its installed capacity is around 5,150 megawatt, which is actually double what Ethiopia is actually consuming by now. So it's going to be a very surplus electric power for Ethiopian people. And as we have already discussed about, in Africa there is a deficiency when it comes to power, and power is one of the main components when it comes to making sustainable development happen in the continent. Just like other African countries, this problem is very much evident in Africa, in Ethiopia as well. Around 60 million Ethiopians people are actually out of the reach of electric power. So when this power is actually coming to Ethiopia, it will power the household, it will power business, it will power the manufacturing, the industrial base. And when the industries, when the manufacturing sector actually in expansion, they will create so many kind of jobs, and millions of people will get job opportunities. When the job opportunities enhanced or increased, the standard of people's life, because when their income is increased, the standard of the standard of their living quality would also be increased. And at the same time, as I have already mentioned earlier, Ethiopia also by now exporting power to neighboring countries, mainly to Egypt, mainly to Kenya, Djibouti, and at the same time to Sudan. Now this surplus electric power definitely will export to the neighboring countries as well. So it's also just like what Ethiopia has actually needed. It will also power their household, their business, their manufacturing sector as well. So the benefit will be a shared one. That's what Ethiopia has aspired to see. Once Ethiopia is previously considered to be of course, by now Ethiopia is considered to be the water tower of the Eastern Africa, because Ethiopia has a large amount of water resource. One of that is the Nile resource, because Ethiopia emanates around 85% of the Nile water resource. And once this resource crossed the border, it's going to be a shared resource. And Ethiopia doesn't have any intention to exclusive ownership of the water. Rather, Ethiopia was actually espousing the principle of shared, at the same time, reasonable utilization of the Nile water. So with that principle, Ethiopia has been utilized the Nile water. We do expect Ethiopia will in the future also utilize its water resource, at the same time other natural resources, on the basis of fair and reasonable in a reasonable manner, for the benefit of the people, at the same time for the benefit of the people of the Horn of Africa, at the same time the Eastern African region. So this dam is going to be a shared resource, a shared benefit, not only for Ethiopia but also the neighboring countries as well. So its benefits actually easily permeated to other regional countries as well. So its ramification impact not only confined to Ethiopia but also to the wider African region as well. So it's a big win for Africa as well, I would say.
Yeah, what's wise is to share this resource, just together, and there must be, a kind of regional cooperation, and of course, the importance of the African-led development projects is, highlighted here, or it should be highlighted. Truly speaking, as you said, this Nile is a transboundary river. And it's not only owned by Ethiopia, it reaches, other countries, especially the low riparian countries. And now these countries, so far, and still insist that, they should own the river just only by themselves, and they should own it. Still, they want to exclude Ethiopia from the share of the Nile River, which is unacceptable and which cannot be rational in any way. And Ethiopia, after it completes, the construction of the GERD, still ensures that, this water flows to these low riparian countries such as the Sudan and Egypt. And Egypt and Sudan, need to come to the table and then, start, to work with Ethiopia.
Yes.
And they need to cooperate in a way that is positive so that, everybody benefits.
Yeah.
You cannot be selfish these days because this is a resource that is owned and shared by multiple countries, in both the upper and lower riparian nations. Well, Having said this, of course,
I mean, just to add on what you have already said, I mean, one of the benefits of the completion of the Great Renaissance Dam is in terms of just changing the narration that Niles belong to only to some riparian countries. Rather, it's belong to the 11 Nile riparian countries,
yes.
you know, and it is the intention of Ethiopia to make it so. I mean, as you have said, you know, the resource, as it has been crossed so many borders, it has to be shared by every riparian countries, which are actually belong to the Nile, you know. So this is one of the good things that we have been witnessing after the completion of the GERD. Of course, by now, I would assume they would understand that they are actually making a mistakes when they think that this water resource is only belong to them, you know. Now they have to think, they have to look back to the past, what they have already make. I mean, in terms of just recorrecting their assumption about the water resource, and they would come to the table to find, I mean, amicable solutions. I mean, the first thing is going to be, I mean, they have to change their I mean, you know, I mean, they are actually stuck to the 1929 and the 1959 agreement. You know, they are still just winning about, you know, Ethiopia is actually, you know, just taking the water, something like this one. Of course, on the reality, on the ground, Ethiopia hasn't done any significant part to this this country. So I think this is one of the lessons that we have taken from the completion of the
as much as
Renaissance
they need
Dam.
the water, we seek development.
Yep.
Yeah, and there must be, you know, a balance made between the two. Yeah, and so the two parties, the upper and the lower riparian countries, need to work together so that the lower riparian countries, of course, need the water, and the upper as much need, you know, development. And for this to happen, you know, there must be a very good cooperation between them, and this benefits, you know, obviously both. As you said earlier, the GERD produces electricity, and this electricity is not only for Ethiopia. Firstly, you know, Ethiopia cannot consume, you know, all the power generated from the GERD. Okay, and secondly, of course, it's not selfish. Ethiopia is not selfish. It doesn't want to keep it for itself. Rather, it wants at least to sell it and then, you know, to benefit out of it. And in this process, obviously, other nations benefit a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. When you come to even, for example, when you look at its contribution to the fight against climate change, you know, the Great Renaissance Dam is the hydroelectric power project, and it's actually reduced the dependency on the fossil fuels. You know, in Africa, we actually depend on the fossil fuels, which is mainly on coal, oil, and gas. Now, the electricity, this amount of electricity, which is around 5,150 megawatts of electricity, is actually produced out of electric water resources, you know, which doesn't have any greenhouse emission. You know, Ethiopia, you know, we have been, you know, doing some good things when it comes to fighting the climate change. For example, for the last 7 years, we have been just planting billions of trees in a fight against climate change. In addition to this one, we are also producing this amount of electricity without just, you know, impacting our climate, our environment. So this also, in this dimension also, you know, the beneficiary would be the international community as well, not only Ethiopia and the region only, you know. So this is one thing that we have to take into consideration.
Yes. Barakat, let me take you to Ethiopia's pursuit of access to the sea, which is, of course, a very important matter. When we consider the historical, economic, and strategic importance of access to the sea for Ethiopia's development, what can we say?
I mean, like this question, I mean, we have been discussing about this thing since the issue is coming to on board for, I mean, in recent times. I mean, for me, this issue need to be understood in a wider context, and our neighboring countries, they have to understand, I mean, the world is changing, you know. We are now actually in a very changing world, you know. So there is nothing which is static, and everything is in dynamic. The world is changing. For example, if you look at the Ethiopian context, you know, our population is growing. The Ethiopian population is growing at an unprecedented level. For example, when Ethiopia lost its sea access in the early 90s, the Ethiopian population was estimated around 40 million people. Now the Ethiopian population now reached to 130 million people. the Ethiopian economy is growing as well. So, which means the demand is growing as well. So, our demand is growing. So, the Ethiopian government needs to have that capacity to respond to the demand of its people. And this evolving situation needs to be understood by our neighboring countries as well. So, Ethiopia, can never be landlocked country from now on, as we have been aspired to be, the developed country. At the same time, our population is growing, our demand is growing. So they need to understand from this perspective. So Ethiopia's, as Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed explicitly pointed out, that Ethiopia aspires to have a sea access is, not only beneficial for Ethiopia, but also beneficial for the neighboring countries as well. For now, Ethiopia is dependent upon, for example, its inbound and outbound trade dependent upon the Djibouti ports. And Ethiopia has been paying around like $3 billion per annum for this one. This is actually costing Ethiopia. Of course, it has also some sort of economic benefit both for Ethiopia, at the same time for the Djiboutian people, very much for them as well. But from Ethiopian perspective, it's very much costly, it's very much expensive. At the same time, it will also increase its economic, at the same time, security vulnerabilities. Just imagine all of the items, all of the goods are actually coming through, from your neighboring country. So it means, some of the things have to be, secured, from the security perspective. But Ethiopia has lost that privilege. So Ethiopia need to secure that one. And at the same time, the Red Sea, the Bab el-Mandeb, all the way to the Indian Ocean is prone to some sort of insecurities. We can see that the hot spot of insecurity. That is the choke point of international trade. Every traditional, superpowers like US, that of Russia also have a base in some of the countries, because they have a great stake on that line, because that is one of the big choke points when it comes to international trade. And other emerging powers like China, Turkish, like India also, they have some sort of stake, just like other traditional superpowers. Even some regional powers in the GCC, in the Gulf of countries like UAE, Saudi, have also some stake on that one. So Ethiopia very much near to the Red Sea, like almost 60 kilometers away from the coastline. Just like them, Ethiopia have also some sort of stake on that one. So Ethiopia needs to have some access to the sea. So this is, a legitimate question, and it needs to be understood by our neighbors as well. In a way that Ethiopia is actually considering. So it has to be responded in a way that actually address the interests of Ethiopia, at the same time the neighboring countries.
Yes, Barakat. Ethiopia has been, of course, seeking, access to the sea for quite too long. This is not, the first time Ethiopia demands access to the sea.
Yep.
And recently, as Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had, his fourth book, the Medemir State book, inaugurated, of course, he just mentioned the need for ensuring or securing, sea access. And he has always been saying that access to the sea for Ethiopia is something that Ethiopia cannot, overlook. It is so important. It's just a matter of life and death, we can say. Now, as you said earlier, of course, the Ethiopian population has grown significantly in the last, 30 years, almost more than double than it was 30 years ago. And Ethiopia, if it stays as landlocked as it is now, for the coming years, and it might be, it might be difficult for the country to sustain, the things that are existing around it now. So there must be a change, and that change, of course, demands, access to the sea, okay? And Prime Minister Abiy previously mentioned that, of course, access to the sea is a necessity for Ethiopia due to the fact that, the population is growing significantly. And if we remain as poor because of lack of access of the sea, and if anything goes wrong, this huge population bursts like, a bubble. And then, that's not going to be good for neighboring countries. So cooperating with Ethiopia and ensuring, access to the sea is something beneficial as well for neighboring countries as well. And so if neighboring countries play, their role, their negative role in trying to avoid, Ethiopia's access to the sea, then it's not going to be, a very good thing for the neighboring countries. And Ethiopians have lived, in poverty for quite too long. And this time is a time that, the country, of course, wants to keep walking forward, okay, leapfrog in development, in prosperity, towards prosperity, and so neighboring countries, should cooperate, and Ethiopians at the same time need to understand the importance of sea access for the country, and that they need to converge, efforts that allows, the country to secure it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, like, as you have said, cooperation is, I think, the only option. I think, as you have said, we are like poor countries.
Yeah.
All the African countries are poor.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, we can say that developing countries, but we have the same kind of, background. We have a humble background. Our past is very difficult. We tried our best to pull out of this shackles. You see, like, how the Asian countries, they pull themselves out of poverty in a very short period of time. Of course, we might mention so many kind of reasons for that, but when you come to Africa, specifically the Horn regions, we need to have that sense of cooperation. The challenge that we have been facing is a very common challenge, and for common challenge there has to be common solution. And Ethiopia is actually pioneer in terms of just paving the way for having a cooperation, and for that Ethiopia has been just open to negotiate on any matters. For example, we can take the Nile water. There has been some claims by the lower riparian country, but Ethiopia has been open since the start of the Grand Renaissance Dam, since its inception. Still now, Ethiopia is open to discuss about and to develop and thrive together. Just like this, the neighboring countries, they should be, they should follow the suits of Ethiopia. When you come to the Great Renaissance Dam, they have to be open to discuss about the sea access, and they shouldn't think that Ethiopia has access to the sea or requests to have access to the sea as a threat to their sovereignty, as a threat to their territorial integrity. Rather, they have to see it in a way that actually help them to develop together with Ethiopia. Because whatever Ethiopia does, it has some sort of ramification. Either it is negative or positive. This one is a positive one, so it would have a positive impact to the neighboring countries as well. And one thing that I would like to mention here is when the neighboring countries faced problems. For example, in 2006, when Somalia faced internal problems, peace and security, Ethiopia was the first country to step in and contribute its own fair share for the maintenance of peace and security in Somalia. When South Sudan faced a problem, when South Sudan was actually just find itself in a grim reality of, the devastating civil war, Ethiopia was the first country to contribute its own fair share. So Ethiopia has actually played by the principle of non-indifference. Ethiopia has never been just sit and see, the plights of our neighboring countries. Ethiopia was the first country always, to help the brotherly and sisterly country of the Horn of Africa. Now, Ethiopia is calling out to our neighbors to help us, to give us, or to help us in terms of just gaining access to the sea. So in this case, it is their turn to their favor for Ethiopia as well. This is maybe a simple analysis, but I think I would say that this is their time to do some favor for Ethiopia, as Ethiopia did to them during their time of difficulties.
By the way, if you look at, the Horn of Africa, as we know, it is, always in conflict. And as a result, we have displacements of people.
Yep.
Yeah? And take, Sudan, for example. Because of the internal war in Sudan, we have displaced people, Sudanese, just coming to Ethiopia, staying for some time as refugees. And we can say in the countries, just that surround Ethiopia, when they have conflict, when they have economic, problems, of course, just their citizens, just come to Ethiopia. And we can see that, nations in the Horn of country, in the Horn of Africa, have been impacting each other negatively.
Yep.
And then this has to stop,
Yep.
okay? So collaboration and cooperation is very important amongst, governments in the Horn of Africa. And what Ethiopia needs, especially from the coastal nations, countries, is that they allow Ethiopia access to the sea, so that when this access of the sea is secured by Ethiopia, obviously, Ethiopia will be able to grow, to engage in trade, to engage in development, and that obviously, just will impact these countries positively, because, just they will have a share of benefit in some way. So there is nothing these Horn of African countries can gain out of, just conflicts, out of walking, separately.
Yep.
They need to come together. They need to converge, their efforts, and they need to see what really Ethiopia needs at this moment, which is, access to the sea. And of course, Ethiopian leaders, not only currently, but previously also have taken, just measures to secure, access to the sea, whether that could be right or wrong.
Yes.
It has its own historical situation, event, but this time, Ethiopian leaders are doing their best, to ensure access to the sea through peaceful means, and that needs to be appreciated by the Horn of African countries, especially the coastal countries.
Yes.
In the Horn of Africa.
Yeah. Even Ethiopian Prime Minister, when it comes to let's talk about the means to achieve this one.
Yeah.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed repeatedly mentioned that Ethiopia, he ruled out any military options when it comes to realizing this access to the sea. So the only option that is left for Ethiopia is to achieve this one is through diplomatic channels. So that's why Ethiopia has been engaging with its neighbors. Ethiopia has been engaging with its neighbors regarding this access to the sea request, and Ethiopia should strengthen its engagement with its neighbors through diplomatic channels. Ethiopia should use different or leverage different kind of platforms, maybe which is provided by the African Unions, maybe the UN, and Ethiopia has to use different kind of means to reach to its neighbors. They have to understand what Ethiopia is actually aspired to get. But we have seen some sort of things are not clear for to those who are actually looking at us. That's why they're actually rallying around against us. So there has to be some clarity about that one. So they need to look the Ethiopian side from Ethiopia's shoe. And that's why what I'm previously I have said that the new possibility in the Eastern Africa, in the Horn of Africa, is geopolitical regionalism, which means cooperation. Ethiopia has been pursuing this one for the past 2 decades. Now the Ethiopian government strengthens this approach. So they need to follow Ethiopian suit as well. So there is no any option unless otherwise the Horn African countries work together and get rid of the challenge that they have been facing. Because among the 5 regions, the Horn of Africa is somehow lag behind in terms of stability, in terms of economic development as well. So one of the reason is the fact that these countries, despite the fact that they have been working together, their cooperation is not enough to address this challenge. So now it is the time. Now this is the high time for them to come together and solve this challenge for once and all.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And for this, Prime Minister Abiy has insisted, or has been insisting, that war is, the last option. Ethiopia does not want to engage in war to ensure this access to the sea, and it is inviting, these nations to cooperate with Ethiopia in the process of securing access to the sea.
Yep.
Yes. Barakat, I think time limits us here, and I think thank you very much. I think we need to stop right here. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Viewers, thank you very much for watching today's roundup, which ends right here. Next time we'll come up with other important issues. Until then, Goodbye.